Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today we are going super deep on something I think a lot of people maybe haven't thought about too much,
Okay.
which is Azure Monitor.
Okay, cool.
It's one of those things that I feel like maybe a lot of people just kind of gloss over as they think monitoring. They're like, oh, yeah, like I'll set that up later.
Right, right,
Um, but we're going to try to convince you
right.
today why you should be thinking about it right now.
Absolutely.
And we have an awesome article from Microsoft Learn that was updated late in 2024. So it's super up to
It's
date.
to date, yeah.
And we're going to be, covering this as if you don't know much about it, but also kind of like assuming you've heard of it before.
Right.
So we're going to try to hit kind of like all the levels.
Cool. Yeah, so it's kind of like that middle ground, right?
Yeah.
You've maybe seen it, you've heard of it, but, what is it really?
Yeah.
And I think that's what this deep dive is all about today.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
What is it really and why should you
Right.
care? So why don't we start with just a super basic overview of what this thing even is?
Yeah, so, think about it this way, right? You're responsible for keeping a system up and running, keeping all those plates spinning, making sure things are healthy, performing well.
Right.
Now imagine if you had this central nervous system that could give you insights into all those different pieces.
Yeah.
That's Azure Monitor.
Okay, so it's almost
It's like having eyes everywhere.
like instead of just being able to see the outside of your application, it's like you can see all the inner workings too.
Exactly. It's like an X-ray vision for your entire IT landscape.
I like that.
You get a holistic view of your applications, your infrastructure, even across different cloud platforms.
Okay, that sounds pretty ambitious.
It is ambitious. And it's pretty impressive what it can do.
So what does Microsoft actually say it is designed to do? Like what's their...
You know what's interesting? They don't bog you down in jargon.
Okay.
They keep it pretty simple.
Mm.
The core, maximizing the availability and performance of your applications and services.
Okay.
But it's not just about collecting data for the sake of it, right? It's about turning that data into something meaningful.
So actionable insights, not just a bunch of numbers and graphs.
Exactly. You want to understand how your applications are performing.
Right.
Where are the bottlenecks? What might be causing issues?
Right.
And then, even more importantly, how can you react to those events?
Okay.
Whether it's manual intervention or, even better, automating those responses.
So kind of like getting ahead of the problem before it becomes a problem.
Exactly. That's the ultimate goal.
Okay, so how much can Azure Monitor actually monitor? Is it just for stuff in Azure?
That's the thing that always blows me away. Its reach is huge.
Okay.
It's not limited to just your Azure resources.
Okay.
It can pull in data from practically anywhere.
Like on-prem?
On-prem, other cloud providers, you name it.
Wow.
Applications, VMs, guest operating systems, container. Even if you're running Prometheus metrics inside those containers.
Oh, cool.
Databases, security events, network events. It's pretty comprehensive.
So it really is like kind of like the central nervous system for like everything.
That's a great way to put it.
Not just the Azure stuff.
Exactly. Regardless of where your systems live, Azure Monitor can provide that single pane of glass.
So let's say I've got like a web application that's running in Azure, but my database is on-prem.
Right.
Azure Monitor can see both of those and tell me how they're interacting.
Absolutely. And it can even pull in custom data using APIs. Think about tracking business metrics alongside your technical data, all in one place.
Okay, so it's not just for the IT folks then.
Nope. It can be valuable for anyone who needs insights into how things are performing.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. But now I'm thinking, if it's collecting data from everywhere, what does it do with it all?
That's where the architecture of Azure Monitor gets super interesting. It's designed to handle massive amounts of diverse data efficiently, instead of just dumping everything into one giant database, which would be a nightmare, right?
Yeah, and probably slow and expensive.
Exactly. So it uses separate stores that are optimized for different types of data. They call these metrics, logs, traces, and changes.
Okay, so like different warehouses for different kinds of information.
Yeah. Perfect analogy. Each store has a specific purpose and is built to handle a specific type of data.
So tell me more about those different data stores, like what kind of information goes where?
Well, let's start with metrics. This is your time series data. Think numerical data points that change over time.
Okay.
Things like CPU usage, website traffic, error rates. It's like the pulse of your system, giving you real-time insights into performance.
Okay, so like a constant stream of numbers.
Exactly. And then you have logs.
Okay.
This is where all the detailed records of events live. Think application logs, security logs, audit trails. any kind of event data that you might need for troubleshooting or analysis.
So like a detective's notebook, full of clues.
Exactly. And it can handle both structured and unstructured data, so you've got a lot of flexibility.
I'm sensing a theme here. Azure Monitor is all about collecting a ton of information, but then organizing it in a way that actually makes sense.
It's about making that data usable and valuable.
So what about those other two stores you mentioned, traces and changes? What goes in there?
Traces is all about understanding the flow of requests through your application.
Okay.
Imagine being able to follow a single user's journey from the moment they click a button on your website all the way through your backend systems.
Oh, wow.
That's distributed tracing, and it helps you pinpoint performance bottlenecks and understand how different components interact.
So like if I was seeing slow response times for a certain feature on my website, I could use traces to figure out exactly where the delay was happening.
Precisely. And then you have changes. This one's pretty straightforward. It tracks modifications made to your resources,
Okay.
configuration changes, software updates, security settings, Azure Monitor logs it all.
So if something suddenly starts acting up, I can go back and see if a recent change might be the culprit.
Exactly. Helps with troubleshooting and understanding how your environment evolves over time.
Okay, this is already so much more than I thought a monitoring system could do.
Right?
I'm already kind of overwhelmed, but in a good way.
And we're just getting started.
Oh boy.
Now that we have a sense of how it gathers and organizes this mountain of data, the real question is, how do you use it?
Right, because data is useless if you can't do anything with it.
Exactly. How do you turn all this raw information into actionable insights?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Well, we'll dive into all that after the break.
All right, so we're back, and we are ready to make sense of all this Azure Monitor data.
You know, it's like we've gathered all these ingredients. Now it's time to cook up some delicious insights.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Because really, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Turning raw data into something meaningful.
Yeah.
Something that helps you understand your systems better and make better decisions.
So where do we even begin? It seems like there's so much data.
Well, a good starting point is the Azure portal.
Okay.
It's kind of like your mission control for Azure Monitor. It gives you access to a lot of built-in tools and visualizations.
So it's not JST for managing resources. It's actually helpful for monitoring, too.
Absolutely. And they've made it even easier with these things called insights.
Insights.
Yeah, basically they're pre-built visualizations for specific Azure services.
Oh, cool.
Like getting a custom dashboard, but without all the setup.
So it's like a tailored report that just highlights the most important stuff for that service.
Exactly. For example, if you're running a web application, you can use Application Insights.
Okay.
And it'll give you a pre-built dashboard with metrics like response times, request rates, error counts, all the things you care about.
That's super handy, especially for someone who might not be a monitoring expert, but still needs to keep an eye on things.
Yeah, it lowers the barrier to entry.
What other services have these insights?
Well, some of the popular ones are Container Insights for monitoring Kubernetes clusters, VM Insights for your virtual machines, and Network Insights for understanding network traffic and connectivity.
Okay, so basically, no matter what Azure service I'm using, there's probably an insight that can give me a quick overview of how it's doing.
Pretty much. It's a really nice way to get a focused view without having to sift through a ton of data.
So if I was concerned about my web app's performance, I could start with application insights, and then if I wanted to dig deeper into the infrastructure, I could use VM insights to check on the virtual machines running that app.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. But what if I want to go beyond those pre-built dashboards and create something that's more tailored to my specific needs?
Well, you have options there too. You can create custom dashboards in the Azure portal, or you can use workbooks.
Okay, dashboards, those are familiar. What are workbooks exactly?
They're like interactive reports.
Okay.
You can pull data from multiple sources, combine them into a single view. You know, make it really comprehensive.
So I could see how my web app's performance is related to the load on my database server and what's happening with the network traffic all in one place.
Exactly. Workbooks are great for that kind of cross-resource analysis.
Cool.
And if you're into business intelligence tools,
Then
you can even connect Azure Monitor data to Power BI.
Power BI. Now we're talking.
Uh-oh.
I love making fancy charts and graphs.
I mean, who doesn't, right?
Right. It's the best way to impress your boss.
For sure. And Power BI gives you a whole other level of analysis and reporting capabilities.
Awesome. So dashboards, workbooks, Power BI. Azure Monitor seems pretty flexible.
Yeah, you've got choices. It even plays nice with Grafana.
Like Grafana.
Yeah.
The open source dashboarding tool? Seriously?
Seriously, if you're a Grafana fan, you can build custom dashboards that pull data directly from Azure Monitor.
That's so cool. I love how Azure Monitor isn't just locked into its own ecosystem.
Yeah, it's all about giving you the tools you need, whether you prefer Microsoft's way or open source solutions.
All right, so we've talked about seeing the data, making
Mhm.
pretty dashboards and reports, but what about actually analyzing the data? Digging in and figuring out what it all means.
Well, for that, you've got a few powerful tools at your disposal.
Okay, like what?
Metrics Explorer is one of the core ones.
Metrics Explorer.
Yeah, it lets you really dive deep into those metrics we were talking about.
Oh, okay.
Like if you saw high CPU usage on a VM, you could use Metrics Explorer to investigate further.
Oh, so I can see exactly what processes are using up all that CPU.
Exactly. And you can plot charts, see trends over time, zoom in on specific time periods to understand what was happening when things went wrong.
That's super helpful. I'm starting to feel like a real detective here.
Yeah, piecing together the clues.
Yeah.
Uh,
What about all that log data Azure Monitor collects? Is there a way to analyze that too?
Oh, absolutely. You're not going to just stare at those logs all day.
Okay, good, because that sounds terrible.
That's where log analytics comes in. It lets you query your log data using a special query language called KQL, or Kusto Query Language.
KQL. Is that like some super complicated programming language?
Actually, it's not too bad. It's designed specifically for log data, and it's quite intuitive.
Okay, that's good to hear. What kind of things can I do with it?
You can use it to find specific events, filter data, identify patterns, correlate events from different sources. It's very powerful.
So I could use it to find all the error messages in my web apps logs that happened in the last hour? Or maybe search for all login attempts from a specific IP address?
Exactly. You can get as granular as you need to be with KQL.
That's amazing. I'm starting to see how powerful this can be for troubleshooting. Any other cool analysis tools I should know about?
Well, there's one more that's been around for a while but still super useful, change analysis.
Change analysis. What's that do?
It helps you understand how changes in your environment might have caused problems.
Oh, interesting. So if I deployed a new version of my app and suddenly things started breaking, change analysis could help me figure out if that deployment was the culprit.
Exactly. It keeps track of changes across all your Azure resources, so you can see what was modified, when, and by whom.
Okay, so it's basically like a detailed audit trail for my entire Azure environment.
Pretty much. And it's not just about analyzing what went wrong.
Okay.
It's also about understanding how your environment has evolved over time, which can be super helpful for planning and making future decisions.
Okay, I see. So it's not just a reactive tool, it can actually be proactive too.
Exactly. It gives you that historical context, which
Okay.
is super valuable.
Awesome. So we've covered visualizing the data, analyzing it.
Yeah.
But what about actually doing something with those insights?
Right, because all this analysis is great, but it's only useful if you can actually take action.
Yeah, exactly. So how does Azure Monitor help me go from insight to action? Do I need to be sitting at my computer, constantly monitoring dashboards, waiting for something to go wrong?
Well, that's what we're going to get into in the next part, the respond capabilities of Azure Monitor.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Bring on the action. Okay, so we're back and ready to talk about taking action in Azure Monitor. It's like we've gathered all this intel, analyzed the situation. Now it's time to deploy the troops.
Yeah, exactly. Azure Monitor isn't just about passively observing, it's about giving you the tools to respond to events and make your systems more resilient.
Right, because what's the point of knowing there's a problem if you can't do anything about it? So how do we go from insight to action?
Well, one of the key mechanisms is Azure Monitor alerts. It's like having a bunch of little watchdogs constantly scanning your environment and barking when something needs attention.
Okay, so like the smoke detectors of my Azure environment.
Yeah, kind of, but they're way more versatile than a smoke detector.
Yeah.
You can set them up to trigger on all sorts of things.
Like what?
Well, it could be a specific metric crossing a threshold. Like if CPU usage on a server goes above 90%, bam, alert.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or it could be a certain pattern appearing in your log data, like a sudden surge in error messages.
So I could get an alert if my website starts throwing a ton of 500 errors.
Exactly. Or if a critical server goes offline.
Okay, so the alerts themselves are pretty flexible. What happens when an alert actually goes off? Do I just get an email or something?
Well, it can do that, but it can do way more than that.
Okay.
Azure Monitor alerts use these things called action groups.
Action groups.
Yeah, they let you define exactly what happens when an alert is triggered. And it's not just notifications.
So it's not just, hey, something's wrong. It's, hey, something's wrong, and here's what we're going to do about it.
Exactly. You can get those emails and text messages, sure, but you can also trigger webhooks,
Okay.
which can kick off external processes or even integrate with ITSM tools to automatically create a ticket.
So, like, if my database server goes offline, I could have an alert that automatically creates a ticket in my help desk system.
Yep. It streamlines that initial response, gets the right people involved quickly.
That's super cool. And a huge time saver. Can it do even more than that?
It can. You can actually automate remediation with action groups.
Remediation. Like actually fixing the problem. I thought that's where humans had to step in.
Well, for some things, yeah. But for others, you can totally automate it.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. Let's say one of your web servers is running low on disk space.
Okay, classic problem.
Right. So you could have an action group that automatically spins up a new virtual machine, adds it to the load balancer, takes the overloaded server offline, and then notifies your team.
Well, so Azure Monitor is like not just telling me there's a fire, it's actually helping me put it out.
Exactly. And potentially even preventing the fire in the first place, which is where AI Ops comes in.
AI ops. Artificial intelligence. Yeah. Like Skynet. It's going to become self-aware and take over my entire infrastructure.
Uh-huh. No, not quite that dramatic. AI Ops in Azure Monitor is more like having a super smart assistant that's constantly learning and analyzing your systems.
Okay. Less scary.
Right. It helps you anticipate and prevent problems before they even impact your users.
So instead of reacting to problems after they happen, it's like Azure Monitor is helping me be more proactive.
Exactly. AI Ops can predict capacity usage, identify performance bottlenecks, detect anomalies. It can even help you optimize your resources and save money.
So it's like having a team of AI experts working behind the scenes to keep my systems running smoothly.
That's a great way to put it. It's all about making your life easier, your systems more reliable, and your users happier.
I like the sound of that. Any other cool tricks up Azure Monitor's sleeve?
Well, we can't forget about auto-scaling.
Auto-scaling.
Yeah.
Isn't that where Azure Monitor automatically adjusts resources based on demand?
Yep. So if your website traffic spikes, it can automatically spin up more web servers to handle the load and then scale them back down when things quiet down.
That's awesome. So I don't have to worry about manually provisioning and deprovisioning servers all the time.
Nope. Azure Monitor takes care of it for you, so you only pay for what you need when you need it.
It's like magic. So just to recap, Azure Monitor can alert me to problems, help me fix them, even prevent them from happening in the first place. And on top of that, it can automatically adjust my resources to meet demand. Is there anything this thing can't do?
Well, it can't make you coffee yet.
Fair enough. But seriously, it's amazing how much Azure Monitor can do. It's not just a monitoring tool, it's a complete platform for managing the health, performance, and availability of my entire environment.
And don't forget, it's not a data silo. It plays nicely with other systems and tools.
Right. You mentioned integrations earlier. What kinds of things can Azure Monitor connect to?
Well, you can stream data to event hubs, which is great for feeding other systems like Seams.
Teams.
Yeah, security information and event management tools. They're like the big brains for security monitoring.
Okay, so if I wanted to incorporate my Azure Monitor data into a fancy security monitoring platform, I could use Event Hubs to make that happen.
Exactly. And for long-term archival, you can export data to Azure Storage. Super cost-effective way to keep historical data around for auditing or compliance.
That makes sense. What about other tools? Can it integrate with popular third-party monitoring platforms?
Absolutely. There are integrations with tons of tools like Elastic, Datadog, logz.io, Dynatrace, you name it.
So I could still use my favorite tools, but now they can get all this amazing data from Azure Monitor.
Exactly. You get a unified view of your entire environment.
I love it. What about APIs? What role do APIs play in all of this?
Well, APIs are your gateway to building custom solutions and integrations. If you want to create something truly unique or connect to a tool that doesn't have built-in support, the APIs give you the flexibility to do that.
So if I wanted to build my own custom dashboard or integrate with some obscure tool that only I use, I could use the Azure Monitor APIs to make that happen.
Exactly. And if you're into automation, there are also integrations with Azure Logic Apps and Azure Functions.
Ah, yes. Logic Apps and Functions. Those are great for automating tasks and workflows.
Right. So you could have a Logic app that automatically restarts a service if it crashes, or a function that sends you a custom report every morning.
Okay, now we're talking. I'm starting to see the possibilities here. It's like Azure Monitor is the foundation, and then I can build whatever I want on top of it.
It's super powerful. And there are even integrations with Azure DevOps and GitHub for incorporating monitoring into your development workflow.
Wow, so it really touches every aspect of the IT lifecycle, from development to operations to security.
It's a holistic solution for sure. It even connects to other services like Defender for Cloud, Microsoft Sentinel, Microsoft Intune, ITSM connectors. The list goes on and on.
It's like the Swiss Army knife of IT management. I'm walking away from this deep dive with a whole new appreciation for what Azure Monitor can do.
It's impressive, right?
It really is. And I think you've done a great job of explaining it all in a way that's actually understandable.
Well, I'm glad you think so. Hopefully this has inspired you to explore Azure Monitor and see how it can help you improve your own systems.
Absolutely. It's definitely something I'm going to be digging into more. And I encourage everyone listening to do the same. You might be surprised at what you discover.
Yeah, it's a game changer for sure.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Azure Monitor. We hope you found it insightful and helpful.
And until next time, happy monitoring.
See ya.